In this video, we'll be discussing why this chart at this price is the most important for us to be looking at in the markets right now. We'll also be talking about our technical analysis levels for the SP500, Nasdaq, Tesla, Bitcoin, dollar index, gold, and more. Yesterday was all about the bulls in the stock market and also crypto markets, but can they keep it up? Stay tuned to find out more. All right, guys, well, it was a bit of a sea of green in technology, healthcare, and other sectors, while minerals and, of course, banks did not do so well. We can see that down the bottom left-hand side here. Let's take a look at the indices straight away to see where the money was flowing, and it was clearly flowing into the Nasdaq. Take a look at that big bull in the morning. We theorized that if it got through that 13,200 level, it was going to move quickly to the 13.4. It certainly did so, and then from that point, we obviously went even higher. Very impressive stuff here. Breaking key levels. We'll talk about why the bulls may have just got control of this market in a few moments. Let's also talk about the SP 500, 1% up. Also a theorized point. We looked at this last night in the live stream. Looked really, really bullish. And then, of course, IWM and the Dow Jones both coming through with some pretty good numbers there. Let's take a look at the actual sectors to see what happened more. And this is a super rotation day. You can almost see it straight away. Every single hot sector that's been hot, financials, energy, minerals, materials, industrials, all those things were down. However, at the same time, we had tech coming back strong, we had communications, and of course we had healthcare, consumer discretionary, etc. So all of the kind of underappreciated sectors recently were going much, much better in the markets. Let's get straight into the technical analysis today because I think it's really important that we take a look at these markets. Firstly, the dollar index failed again. We can see here on the weekly 89.74. So when we go into the daily chart, you're going to notice 90 failed. And when we go into a 2-hour chart, it's going to become even more apparent. Look at this, support being found right now in the US dollar around this 89.70. And if we breach this, we've theorized that this actually could be the beginning of a very far down pressure point for the dollar index. If we go out here back to a daily and put it in perspective, look at this, 89.23 is the next stop for the dollar index once it breaches this zone. That means risk on in the markets. It means very weak US dollar. Then we get through that zone, we go down to 88.48. And we get through that zone, my goodness, guys, it's going to be a massive, big fall in the US dollar. And this could lead to some serious gains in the stock market as well. So if anyone's got to have alerts underneath this area over here on the longer term, it's always worth putting those minds in just to remember, wait a second, I forgot about that zone, 88.40, that kind of zone on the dollar index. If we ever break underneath that, my goodness, it's going to be serious movements in all of the markets and indices. Let's go over to Dr. Copper as well, because I think this is a good standing of how the health of the economy looks right now. Copper's been running incredibly strongly for quite a few weeks. It kind of did this massive, huge move, came back down, and now it's sitting right on support. So you'll notice here, copper's sitting right on that 450. Sometimes people call it Dr. Copper because it really does show that health of the economy. And right now it's pulling back to just a standard kind of 20 moving average. Might go down as far as the 50 moving average. Nothing to be concerned here, but the bottom would like to be found either at this point or this point, just to show that the market is still healthy and the economy and the rebound is still healthy. Let's go over to gold now because gold has been moving up strongly. It's still hovering around between these zones. And I think yesterday when we did the live stream, a few people said, what do you think about gold right now? I find it difficult to really find a clear direction. In fact, the only way I'm doing it at this stage is to look at this giant long leg doji. Basically, we have a clear support that's in that got hit during that crypto kind of run the other day. And then as soon as crypto got crashed on, gold spiked heavily with a lot of people buying this as, I guess, instability hedge. And we saw it move up. Now, if we get a closure above what we call a long leg doji up here, I think that not only does gold go through 1900 because it's coiling before it, but on top of that, we could be going all the way to the 1960 resistance. Yes, 1960 could be the next stop for gold. You'll see why as soon as you put it on a chart. Resistance, all the way through this point, just underneath 1960. Very nice level, and already a great run here for the metal. Now we go over to silver, similar type of thing. I think silver's looking a little bit stronger. I would like to see a 28 plus close today, if possible, through the Friday session. However, if that doesn't happen, well, that's okay. We can always wait for next week. It's getting trapped between the 20 and the 50 exponential here on the 4 hour. I think a closure either side on the candle is going to push us down to the next level. For the downside, you've got kind of risk in here until the 2680. For the upside, of course, 2850 is the upside. I would prefer it closes to the upside, and that makes some sense considering the weakness that we're seeing throughout the dollar index right now. So look for silver to maybe even make a break to 2850 over the next 24 to maybe 48 hours of trading sessions. Okay, let's move over to BTC because this one everyone's talking about. And I know that some people are sick of crypto, but realistically, it's a very important chart still to be watching. We've got our trend line here with a series of lower highs. We obviously saw that massive spike off, which was caused by huge amounts of uncertainty, huge amounts of illiquidity. And I think the market came back pretty strong. We saw, I think it was about 800,000 plus accounts get liquidated during this point. That's a big amount, but at the same time, the crypto system, all of the isolated kind of funds that many brokers have put in place seem to have held up at least through the big network so far as we know. That's good news for the crypto markets. The other thing that's good is that we're testing bases. So we tested 30, we tested 35, big purchasing, and then yesterday we tested 38 and we've rebounded that. We theorized during the live stream that this 42.5, 42 zone would act as resistance. It certainly did. The sell-off occurred, and now we're putting pressure back on it. I think once we get through this 42.5 for Bitcoin, that will push the markets back up to something like this 45, 46 zone. And once we get through 46, then of course 50 becomes the next level, etc., etc., etc. I'm feeling pretty optimistic about it, but I'd like to see this trend line broken on a significant time frame like an 8 hour or daily before we feel much better about it. I mean, what we've got right now is a trough, a peak, a higher trough, a higher peak. Sequence is in, but we've still got the trend line, and you'll notice here it's struggling with this first horizontal resistance becomes support area. Now, for many of you, you're getting a bit pumped about, of course, the opportunities in the market. We saw big bullishness yesterday, and Tesla is one that we do cover on the channel. We knew that this candle was not a bearish looking candle because it couldn't close below. And on the daily, you'll see this gap below, bullish up. That is not a closure underneath the price. That is a gap with strong buying momentum. Now, we've got this little trap in here, which is basically a little bit of consolidation. You'll see the long leg doji. You'll see the indecision that's between these 2 points. And when Tesla goes, you guys know it goes. So if it gets through this, like let's call it 595, we'll call it 600 because it's a psychological level. If we get a closure above 600, where are we going? I think we're going to like a 660 and then testing the previous support as resistance. And the devil number is probably going to come out, the 666. That's actually the correct level. It's super interesting stuff here on Tesla, and it could happen within the next 2 trading sessions. So in the next 2 trading sessions, we could get up to 666 quite easily, purely based on the fact that we're consolidating down here and we see a closure breakout, which leads to bullish momentum. It also will make sense when we take a look at the FANG and the Nasdaq in just a few moments. Speaking of the FANG, check this one out, guys. FANG index completely looks bullish at this stage. This is a 2 hour chart, but look at this. Support, 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 became resistance. We had a trough, we had a peak, we had a higher trough, and now we've got the higher peak. If we go over to a daily, you're going to see closed confirmation above that level. This thing looks bullish. The candle looks bullish. We had the hammer here in the futures trade. Then, of course, we've got the follow on, breaking to a new high, getting through all these moving averages. The FANG looks super delish in terms of TA on the markets. And I think that this leads to probably potentially all-time highs here. We've got a 5% to the peak here on the FANG, and there's still quite a lot of other tech stocks that are actually still beaten down. Hyper stonks in particular are starting to move, and they're starting to move in big percentages. We move over to the Nasdaq now. Take a look at this. Support, support, resistance, resistance. It's the same level pretty much as the FANG, just in this case, the trough was more defined. We've effectively got here what we call a double bottom. Now, if we take a double bottom and we extrapolate that out, does it proof with the system? Of course, it gets really close to those previous highs. And with yesterday's close, there's still quite a lot of potential here in the Nasdaq peak to trough here, got about 4% in terms of movement, and we know some of those stocks are going to move a lot harder depending on which one you picked. Daily has closed above, gotten through the moving averages. It's moving here in the futures, as you can see. You move over to the QQQ, you load it up, closed above the moving averages. This is the type of thing that you think, yes, the bulls are back in control of the market. The bears have tried to push it through. We got a full-on 8% correction here, pretty much through the Nasdaq market, which is kind of in line with what we thought for May. And the bulls seem to be like, you know what? We're ready to go to the next level, and possibly we're ready for rotation back into tech, because some of those other stocks, such as financials, were getting a little bit too hot, and we want to punish people that have been buying them recently. We reported a few weeks ago that most of Wall Street, when they're buying the banks at the moment, the financials, they're putting covered call scenarios on. So what that means is that they're actually, let's say they buy a bank and they buy it for $180. What they're actually doing is they're selling a call either at $180 to protect it down, or maybe even underneath, where they're selling it at like 178, which gives them some padding. So the idea is they buy it because they think it's stabilized. They want to hold banks in the portfolio, but they don't think that the upside, as in the movement up, is as much as the downside, and they think it's going to be like neutralized. And when you think it's neutralized, or it's going to be maybe, I don't know, 5 to 10% over the next year, and you can receive a guaranteed 5 to 10% in a sold covered call, why wouldn't you just put the covered call on it? And that's what a lot of people in Wall Street are still doing with these financial stocks. So it's very interesting to see that. We also saw Buffett selling Wells Fargo positions and other positions recently. So clearly a few people think that maybe there's not that much gains. Maybe Buffett's also learned from his experiences back in the global financial crisis of how at this period we get a lot of sideways action, and really the banks have to start saying, okay, the sugar rush is over. Let's now find out which ones are doing well, which ones are not doing well. Maybe his advisors have said, look, this time around, we're not going to hold these positions as much, Warren. Okay, we can't do it. We can't do it, man. So let's take a look at this S&P 500. And I think yesterday when we were looking at this, it was all about this level, and 4120 was the zone. We saw the trough, we saw the peak, the higher trough. We theorized, of course, day traders would be coming in at this point, pushing it up to the 4180, and we certainly did get close. At the time of this recording, we got 4169. 4180 is the high. Look, I guess when we're looking at the markets, you always want to look at the SPX. So when you're talking about where does the real bulls come back in, it's going to be 4180 closure above for the S&P. This is going to put in effectively a double bottom. But I think what we saw in the price action we saw from tech yesterday is probably a precursor to further bullish momentum. I mean, this is a very strong level, and it is important, but at the same time, the Nasdaq has already shown us the bullish intentions and the bullish intentions of the market. So definitely check that out. We go to the daily here as well. We reset this and have a look. You will see that, of course, we have a morning star as well. So we've got effectively the sequence that we want. We have a sell-off, we have a bullish hammer, we have a gap both ways, and of course we've got the closure. This is the type of thing that you want. You would have preferred it was, of course, stronger on the right-hand side. Another bullish intention here in the markets. So it looks like the bulls are back, and are back in control of the markets for now. We may see some pullbacks in the Nasdaq, maybe back down to the 13.4. So people are looking for dips. I mean, that's maybe what you get. We go over here and I'll have a quick look at it on the QQQ and you'll see what I mean. Basically just down into this level, find support around this 326.60, and then picks it back up off that level to go long. But it just really looks like the bulls are back, and I think the price action is showing us that across the board. As always, if you guys enjoy this video, please remember to subscribe, hit that like button. We'll see you live 1.5 hours early before stock market open for Friday open. It's going to be an absolute cracker. We might see some very massive moves in some of the hyper stonks as well if the bulls really do get control of this market again. Speak to you soon, guys. Have a great day.